Good afternoon, Arya. Both the Aryas, and then Prakhar, Sadvika, Bhuneshwar, Sahiba. So today we'll just revise what we have just learned from this lesson. What is elementary school classroom? Okay, let's go through the question answers. So here you can see, uh, like the first question is, what do you think is the color of sour cream? Why do you think the poet has used this expression to describe the classroom walls? Okay, so the color of sour cream is pale yellow, and the question is, there is most important second part. Why do you think the poet has used this expression to describe the classroom walls? Okay, so the poet has described this expression, used this expression to describe the dull and pale walls of the classroom. That is important. The dull and pale walls of the classroom in a slum. The sour cream symbolizes the morbid atmosphere of the classroom owing to the indifference of the authorities to the learning needs of the slum children. Okay. So sour cream, that is a symbol actually. Okay. So what does the sour cream symbolize? The sour cream symbolizes the morbid and the sad atmosphere of the classroom. Okay, pale atmosphere of the classroom. Why? Because the infrastructure is not good enough, it's not inviting enough, it is something which is repelling in nature, something that makes you develop a kind of a dislike for it. Okay, so the classroom, the entire infrastructure is not, you can say, conducive to teaching learning. So therefore, sour cream here symbolizes the morbid atmosphere of the classroom due to indifference of the authorities to the learning needs of the slum children. Because these slum children and the slum population has been used by the government as vote banks, you can say. They are just used for vote banks, that's it. That is why they are the uh, I mean, they have been left to languish for all this. Understood? Because the government has indifference towards them. The government doesn't think about the welfare of these kind of people. Okay, that is why there is stark poverty. That is why there is malnutrition prevailing. They are the victims of different kinds of malnutrition. You might have seen, like, somebody was having the very heavy head, somebody who is as thin as paper, somebody's eyes were protruding like those of a rat. So, as you can see here, there are many instances given in the poem, with the help of which we can understand that they are the victims of malnutrition, and by the description of the classroom we can understand that they are deprived of the basic necessities of teaching learning. Okay, so this is what the author is concerned about, and that is why all throughout the poem we can see there is negative element which is working in the underlying, in the mind, you can say. But towards the end he has given a solution or way out. So what is the way out? Yeah. So what is the way out? The way out is education. Until and unless the government authorities, NGOs, they come up with a willing mind to contribute to the growth and development of the slum children, their present status, they cannot be improved. Their present status cannot be enhanced. Their present status, economic, social, intellectual status, cannot be upgraded until and unless the government authorities, until and unless the inspectors, until and unless the NGOs, interfere in their business and try to uplift their status, right? So that is the concept that this you need to understand. So the poet has used these expressions like sometimes symbols, sometimes uh, you can say a metaphor, sometimes simile, just to uh, drive home the point, drive home the message to us that the slum children are going through such a horrible, state. Understood? They are going through such a horrible phase of their life. Understood? So that is what we got to know from the second question. Then the third question, as you can see here, the walls of the classroom are decorated with a picture of Shakespeare, buildings with domes, word maps, and beautiful valley. Okay, so dear students, these fanciful pictures, like for example, picture of Shakespeare, uh, domed buildings, then world maps, then beautiful valley. So these are some of the images. These are some of the imagery, or you can say images, like which are a total contrast to the deplorable socio-economic condition that the slum children are going through, right? That is why all these fanciful images are irrelevant to the needs of the children, right? How do this contrast with the world of the children? So you understood the question now. The question is how these fanciful pictures or images are a contrast with the world of the children. They are a total contrast because the slum children have never been able to have access to this beautiful world. Okay, so these fanciful pictures consisting of civilized society and beautiful natural landscapes are irrelevant to the learning needs of slum children. They are irrelevant to the learning needs of the slum children. These pictures represent a progressive and advanced society in which these slum children can never have access to due to their glaring poverty. So these pictures which are hung on the classroom wall, these pictures represent a progressive advanced society, right? Progressive advanced society in which these slum children can never have access. That is why these children live in an environment. Why it is irrelevant? Because these children live in an environment of poverty, hunger, scarcity, and disease in a pathetic condition in contrast to the prosperous and developing world as depicted on the classroom walls. Therefore, these pictures are irrelevant as they can have negative impact in the minds of the children. So, these children, when you write the answers of such questions, you need to use certain standard words. Okay, like even if you don't learn by heart, you have to remember some of the standard words and expressions. Like for example, you can say like pathetic condition, you can use prosperous and developing world, you can use depicted in the classroom. Like these are some of the important negative impact, right? So these are some of the words and phrases very much relevant to writing such answers, right? So please do remember these important phrases, right? So that is why these imagery in the form of picture of Shakespeare or building domed buildings or world maps or beautiful valley, they are all images, they are all irrelevant because they represent civilized society and beautiful natural landscape in which the slum children have no access at all, right? What does the poet want for the children of the slums? How can their lives be made to changes? What does the poet want for the children of the slums? The poet wants the slum children to come out of their glaring poverty and malnutrition. He also wants them to have access to basic education. The poet wants the slum children to come out of their glaring poverty and malnutrition. He also wants them to have access to basic education. Their lives can be made to changes only when the authorities in power, the authorities, what happens, dear students? Authorities Okay. He also wants them to have access to basic education. Their lives can be made to changes only when the authorities in power extend their helping hands and cater to the educational and nutritional needs of the children. If the basic school infrastructure, books, shelter, and food are facilitated to the children, their educational needs can be fulfilled and malnutrition be curbed in the long run. Okay, so towards the end of the poem, the poet want what does the poet want for the children of the slums? So the poet desperately wants the slum children to come out of their glaring poverty. So please do remember this relevant phrase: glaring poverty and malnutrition. So you've got to use these relevant words and phrases in your answer. So please do remember these very relevant phrases and idioms. Okay, glaring poverty and malnutrition. He also wants them to have access to basic education, right? So the poet wants the children of slum to have access to basic education because education is the only way out for everybody in the society to come out of the deplorable condition of life, right? Their lives can be made to change only when the authorities in power extend their helping hands and cater to the educational and nutritional needs of the children. Not only educational and nutritional needs also, right? So they have to be funded properly so that they can buy food. Okay, their ration is taken care of. They can have subsidized meals, right? Now, if the basic school infrastructure, books, shelter, and food are facilitated, then their educational needs can also be fulfilled and malnutrition can be curbed in the long run. So, this is what is very important. So, what are the important relevant words and phrases from this that you have learned, dear students? You have learned, like here, you can say educational nutritional needs. Then you can say if they are provided infrastructure, books, shelter, and foods, then malnutrition can be curbed in the long run, right? So if you use somewhat standard phrases and idioms, phrases and words in your answer, then that will add feather. Okay, like that will help you to create good impression in the minds of the examiner, right? So that is why we should always try, according to our age, we should always try to use some standard phrase and idioms while we interact with others, right? So that, because always remember that every subject has their own standard word and phrases, so that you need to pick up by means of reading, by means of listening, right? That is why I always encourage students, if you are not so much interested in reading, why not you go through the podcast, listen to various people who are making podcast. By listening you can learn many things, right? um, like in Spotify, you can also hear Aaj Tak, podcast, Aaj Tak. You can search on Spotify, Aaj Tak, and then Din Bhar. There are two programs. Din Bhar is there, which comes in the evening at 7 o'clock, I suppose, and Aaj Ka Din or something. It comes around 7 o'clock in the morning. So both I mean, any one of these podcasts you can hear every day to improve your knowledge of general knowledge. And it's podcast, it's broadcast in Hindi actually, so you can understand every bit of it. Okay, and besides this, you can also hear some English podcasts as well, so as to improve your vocabulary and expressions. Okay. Anyway, dear students, next extra question you see here: how is Shakespeare wicked and map a bad example? Okay, Shakespeare has been referred to as wicked because the lives of slum children have no access to what is displayed on the walls. Shakespeare showcases an array of ambitious characters and a host of royal scenes which are quite irrelevant to the slum children. Like if you have ever gone through the plays of Shakespeare, like Merchant of Venice or Hamlet or Macbeth, you might have observed that his characters are royal characters. Plus, he incorporates or includes royal scenes. Okay, in his play, like you need to have beautiful props and all in order to in order to like role play in Shakespeare's drama. So that is why Shakespeare has been referred to as wicked, because the kind of world that he presents in his presentation of drama, or in his drama, or in his play, this world is much beyond the access of the slum children. So, as the world that Shakespeare creates in his plays is beyond the reach of the slum children, therefore Shakespeare has been referred to as wicked. The map also shows the foreign land with beautiful landscape. The slum children cannot ever visit such places. Therefore, Shakespeare and the map is a bad example for the slum children. Shakespeare and the map is a bad example. Okay, both Shakespeare and map, both of them are a bad example of bad example for the slum children. Next, you see which words or phrases in the poem show that the slum children are suffering from acute malnutrition. So, dear students, it's very simple, like stunted, twisted bones, paper seeming boy, skin peeped through the bones. These are some of the words and expressions which go on to suggest that the slum children suffer from malnutrition, right? Then, what changes does the poet hope for in the lives of slum children? What kind of changes does the poet hope? The poet exhorts the people in power. Exhorts. See, this is a very good word for you to make use of. The poet exhorts. Exhorts means appeals, requests the people in power to improve the plight of the slum children and break their windows, which shut the growth of these children. He asks them to show the children the green fields and golden sands. The poet hopes that if these children are facilitated proper infrastructure for education, they will mold this history in their favor. They will mold the history in their favor. Yes, otherwise it's not possible. Okay, somebody has to fund the education and health of, health concern of the slum children. Only then they will also grow up like the other children, the normal children. So the poet exhorts the people in power to improve the plight. Plight means the fate, FATE, fate of the slum children, and break their windows, which shut the growth of these children. Okay. Um, He asks them to show the children the green fields and golden sands. The poet hopes that if the children are facilitated proper infrastructure for education, they will mold history in their favor. Okay, mold history in their favor means they will create history. Okay, they will create history according to their individual talent. Okay, so for this, the government has to come forward, and NGOs or the authorities in power should come together in order to upgrade the status of these slum children. So, dear students, there is a quiz there. So you can, or we can do tomorrow this quiz. Okay, for the MCQ worksheet of this lesson. So you can do this MCQ worksheet tomorrow. Okay, we shall do together. So, dear students. I think these questions are sufficient. And besides what I have discussed, you also learn these words and phrases. Okay, these beautiful words and phrases. Like for example, what does the writer, poet mean by Shakespeare is wicked? Why is the map a bad example? So from here you can learn, right? Then you can learn here, what does the writer mean by where skins peep through by bones? So are given here, right? So these are some of the expressions, difficult expressions, starts of words. So these are some of the difficult expressions you please learn. Avoiding the word its word, very important. Avoiding the word its word, right? So these are some of the important expressions. Please do learn separately, because they might come in the extra questions, right? So and whatever I discussed, I think these are sufficient, okay, for the preparation of this poem. And if we study MCQ worksheet of this lesson, then we can come to know some more important questions. So that's it for this poem, dear students. We might start a new lesson in the next class, or we might continue with the worksheet first here, and then we can start with the new lesson, right? So that's it, dear students. Let me wind up here today. Please text me P, so that, yes, thank you so much, Sahiba and Sadvika, So, thank you so much, Mansi. We'll continue with our lesson tomorrow. Okay. So, thank you. Bye bye and take care.